Well, welcome back, YouTube. This is Rice Paddy Reasons, and I am your Rice Paddy Daddy. Hey. So I hope you guys are all doing well today. We're going to work out of the notebook yet again. And what I want to share with you guys today is 4 different passport strategies, along with the pros and the cons of each of them. So before we get started, please remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell so you know when I drop a new video, and please leave a comment so that I know what you're thinking too. So let's get into it, folks. Not only did I come up with different strategies, but I named them as well. So number 1, that's gonna be part-time Tommy. Okay, so Tommy, he works a regular job, like many of us. All right, and he can't afford a whole lot, but he's gonna live below his means, save his money, and travel whenever he can. So the pros of being a part-time Tommy. Okay, all right, you can do this in pretty much any scenario. It doesn't matter what your job is. All you have to do is live below your means, save money, and you can travel. It's pretty easy to do. The other pro is that it lets you get started and it lets you see what's out there and what is possible. I'm sure that anybody who has never traveled before can use this method and this strategy to really see what's out there and what other places are like. The cons of part-time Tommy, one of which is you always have to come back. You are limited to how much you could afford and how much your trip was, and it's gonna cost you money, and you're gonna have to keep on doing it again and again because you have to keep on working, which is the second one. The third is that it's really not terribly sustainable because you're gonna have to keep on doing this. You're essentially putting all your savings towards being able to take your next trip. So if you want to be able to travel full time, then this may not be the best strategy for you. Strategy number 2. This is retired Reggie. Okay, Reggie is a retired expat. In other words, he lives out of the country full time because Reggie has a retirement or a pension or a fixed income of some sort that allows him to live outside of the United States or outside of the West full time. Because he's able to take advantage of the lower cost of living in other countries, he's able to afford a lot better than he would have been if he were staying. And because he's out of the country full time, he can take advantage of things like residency and even second citizenship, which is always a good thing. Like, some of the pros of being a retired Reggie is that you're able to live and therefore integrate yourself into another culture, which means like learning the languages and customs, becoming familiar with the laws and the culture of other countries, which allows him to fit in better. And next thing you know, it's just like he's one of them. Or at the very least, he's treated as if he is one of them. You also get to enjoy your life without having to worry about working. You can spend your time doing whatever you want. You also have a certain security because in general, pensions are pretty much until you die, so you know that you can count on that income. Some of the cons of being a retired Reggie are that you typically are going to have smaller savings than you normally would in some of these other strategies because you're relying on a fixed income. Typically, Reggie, all right, in this example anyways, pretty much makes about what he can afford to live in another country. So he's pretty much at the bare minimum. So he can enjoy his life, he can live, he can provide, and he can enjoy the rest of his life, but he's not really going to see a whole lot of financial growth. In many cases, Reggie is just going to have to be happy with less. Now, if you are a retired Reggie, I am not slamming you at all. I'm just saying that if you're happy with a certain ceiling, then that is okay. Because ultimately, if you're happy, that's the only thing that really matters here. Strategy number 4. This would be Digital Dan. Dan has a job, but it is not location independent. Okay? He can work from his laptop from anywhere in the world, and he can make money from anywhere in the world. Now, I want to say nearly everywhere in the world because usually this involves an internet connection, and not every place has that. Because Dan can pretty much work from anywhere, he can take advantage of the lower cost of living, and more of his income can be saved and therefore put towards assets that make him more money. And because he can be out of the country for as long as he wants to, he can also take advantage of residency programs and second citizenship programs. So the pros of being a Digital Dan, outside of what I've already stated, is Dan can see as many new locations as he can afford to, because his job doesn't require him to be in any particular place. And generally speaking, Dan is going to enjoy a much better lifestyle than he would if he had stayed in the West by doing the same job. Dan is also going to enjoy a high degree of freedom because he can pretty much work as he needs to be able to afford the lifestyle that he wants. So some of the cons of being a Digital Dan is that, first, you're still working. In other words, even if you're working for yourself, you are still having to work for your money. This means that if you stop working, you stop making money. Now, this is an issue that you're going to have with any job. Dan might not have as much freedom as he wants because he is reliant on infrastructure. In other words, you need electricity, and you definitely need an internet connection in order to continue to earn money. So this means that if you wanted to live on a remote island where there's absolutely nothing and you want to rough it, I'm kind of into that, but not everybody's into that. But if you wanted to do that, then you wouldn't be able to earn any money while you're there because it has no infrastructure. So you're talking about staying near big cities, or at least a system where you can continue to earn. And because Dan is still working for his money, it also means that he has to balance his time. In other words, he can't just spend all day long doing whatever he wants to. He may enjoy more freedom, but he may not have complete freedom. Strategy number 4. This would be Investor Ian. Now, Ian makes all passive income. He essentially can make money while he sleeps. He is trading a minimum amount of time for his money. Typically, if you've gotten to this point where you can pretty much live off of the returns from your investments, it usually means that all your bills are paid and you still have money left over to reinvest and give yourself pay raise after pay raise every time you get a return. Furthermore, Ian sees travel as being both a business and a pleasure because he's taking advantage of global markets and investing in real estate and other financial vehicles that have nothing to do with the West. So the pros of being an investor, Ian, apart from what I've already stated, is that he is going to, of course, have a high degree of freedom because he can afford to travel pretty much anywhere that he likes, and he can afford to have all of the experiences that he wants to experience. And because he doesn't have to spend hours a day on a job, he can pretty much have the time that he wants to experience anything that he wants. This includes being able to do stuff like learn a second language or a third language and really get into the culture and experience the culture and its people. So some of the cons of being an investor, Ian, is that of all the people that could be targets for crooks and scammers, Ian is the biggest target. They're all looking for a guy like this. So Ian has to be more careful than anybody else. This means that Ian really has to pay attention to who he's associating with and making sure that he knows them well and vetting them properly to know that if they're making friends with him, he has to make sure that they really like him for him and they're not just out for his money. The second con is that it's really not easy to become an investor, Ian. You have to make a lot of sacrifices, and many times that's going to involve sacrificing the things that you want now in order to get what you want later. This ties right back into Rice Paddy's mental tool number 2. Go watch that video if you haven't yet. Also, a major drawback to being an investor, Ian, is that maybe you have a little bit too much freedom and you might not know what to do with yourself sometimes. And you might either get bored or you might party too much, which could seriously affect your health. So Investor Ian probably needs a few hobbies and a few things to keep him occupied besides partying so that he can continue to remain mentally sharp and physically in shape. Now, these are just 4 examples of what is possible and what it looks like. But by no means am I saying that I've covered everything. That would be impossible to do in one video. But this should give you some idea of what your end game should look like. What are your goals for travel? And how do you want your life to look when you're traveling? Where do you see yourself ending up? What strategy would you like to be at? And keep in mind, you don't have to be any single one of these permanently. You can transition from one to another. So if you guys think that I missed something and you wanted to add something, or you came up with a brand new strategy that I didn't think of, because I'm sure there are a ton, please send me an email and let me know. Hey, there's a lot of guys out there that probably haven't thought about what their travel strategy should look like, and this helps people get started. So you can hit me up or ask me any questions at ricepaddyreasons@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with every single one of you guys. So I hope all this is helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments, and until the next video, hey guys, passports up. You guys keep growing and deserve your victory.